that when it comes to the client responsibility, I think the client should do their research on what they're signing up for. But at the same time, I don't know that we've done a good enough job educating to be able to teach somebody how to discern, like, is this the right workout for me? Mm-hmm. Because most of my clients don't know what's the right workout for them. And that really starts with, well, what are your goals? And if you don't sit down with somebody one-on-one to figure out what your goals are and figure out what your driver is, and your goals can evolve and change. And most of the people I work with, their goals evolve every couple months, every year, whatever it is. And I can catch that before they do often. So it's tricky. And, you know, I wish I could say, like, you should definitely look at this and this and this and research this and find this out. A lot of times it comes down to, like, does this seem like a place that I'm comfortable working out in? And I think that's where people make their decision and then kind of leave it at that.
Let's link up with Krysta on the FYX. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
What's going on, FYX listeners? Welcome to episode 68 of the FYX podcast. I'm your host, Krysta Huber, and I've got some little fun for you guys today. I am flipping the script, and I'm actually sharing an episode that I recorded a couple months back. It was in the summer of 2021 with my good friend and mentor, Chase Chewning. I've had him as a guest on the show, but at the same time, I've also been a guest of his, and we recorded a fun interview together talking all about group fitness, talking about the boutique fitness space and how I personally really got my start there in the world of health and wellness. And then more specifically about how you, as a boutique fitness goer, a class taker, or whatever you want to call yourself as, if you are a part of that scene, can really hold yourself accountable and figure out what the right fitness routine is for you. And I think this is a really timely conversation to kind of bring back up. It's April. It's a new month. We're in the spring, and before we know it, it's going to be Memorial Day weekend, and people are starting to think about how their schedules are shifting a little bit coming into the summer months. And with those shifts might come changes in your fitness routine, because maybe you're not going to the gym at the same exact time. Maybe you're traveling a little bit more because it's the summer. Maybe you have a bunch of weddings, all these different variables that start to come into play. I feel like the weather gets nicer, and we just tend to start to get a little bit busier. Or maybe if you're on the road and on the go, you're changing up your typical fitness environment. So from this recording, you'll hear me talk a little bit about my expertise and my story, which a lot of you as listeners to the show already know. But I also think that I don't always talk so much about the fitness and training and programming side of things, because I spend so much time talking about nutrition. And I think this also brings up a really interesting point to expand on, is thinking about how your fitness should then tie in to your nutrition and vice versa. It's really easy to just stick to what's familiar. And I actually referenced that in my chat with Chase, and talking about, well, as a fitness goer, how do I figure out what the right workout is for me? I think a lot of people don't know. It's one thing to be somebody like myself who's taking it upon herself to get an education in this because it was something that started as a passion, but that's not necessarily the way that everyone goes. So a lot of times you find yourself walking into, the newest, hottest fitness trend because two of your friends told you to come, and you feel comfortable in that community and in that environment. And I want to preface this entire chat by saying and reiterating that that's great. If that's your motivation to get you into a regular fitness schedule, then awesome. That's a really great place to get started. But if we're being totally honest with ourselves, that might only take you so far. And I think that that's something that can be a little bit trickier to navigate when you haven't taken a step back to really sit down and think about what your goals are. So if you're listening to this and you're trying to, and maybe you're not even somebody who necessarily has ever taken a class in your life, I still think you'll find some value in it, because I think it might help you understand what some of the benefits are of being in the world of group fitness, and maybe how you can try something new if that's going to get you excited about working out again, if you feel like that's been a little bit stale for you. But I think regardless of your fitness preferences, this is just a good way to really get yourself wondering, like, do I understand what my goals are? Have I taken a couple minutes to sit down and really map that out? Because I often find in my experience with working with people is they don't know what to do with their fitness, because they know that they might want to lose weight, and that's a great goal. But they're like, what are all the other pieces that I need to focus on to get there? Yes, nutrition is the big one. It's usually the one that tends to be missing more often than not. But, and this is a big but, if you want to see physique changes and you want to see body composition changes, your resistance training has to have a very specific, often times, program behind it, and a specific intention behind it, really. Whether that's because of social media, whether that's because of the ease with which people can become trainers and group fitness instructors today, sometimes we're not always getting that experience out of group exercise. So in my own life, what I've really seen, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, going through calorie deficit and really starting to see some changes to my physique in the last 2 months alone, is being more intentional with my workouts and no longer being the person who used to be all about cardio and high intensity and going through workout to the point where I was leaving myself on the floor like, oh my gosh, I'm dead. And lifting heavier, noticing how that's literally changing the shape of my body, and just honestly enjoying my workouts more because of it, because I felt like I could get through them and they felt powerful, and they continue to feel that way today. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. Would, again, love for you to go check out Chase's podcast as well. I'll plug it down in the show notes. But also, just if you have questions when it comes to figuring out what the right group fitness routine is for you, or just maybe you want to take a step back on programming and are wondering where you can get started to kind of venture into the gym on your own, would love to support you in that journey in any capacity. So reach out to me on social media, shoot me a DM at the Krysta Huber, and we can chat. And with that, let's jump right into this episode.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I know I mentioned to you a couple weeks ago when we were recording for my podcast, I said to you, this is the first podcast that I've been on that I listen to religiously, and that's a really exciting experience.
That's really cool. It's been great getting to know you, and and congratulations on your podcast journey. You kicked yours off earlier this year, and from like one coach to another, and now a podcaster to another. About 6 months in, I hope, I'm sure you're already kind of seeing just how much of a benefit this new extension of you and your content and your business is for so many other people. If nothing else, just having a library of information to refer people to that you're already helping in your coaching business. No?
100%. And it's been a really great way. I think the biggest takeaway I've had with it, just in being able to connect with other people, because I'm not going to pretend to be an expert about the just insane amount of topics that we can cover in the fitness, nutrition, wellness space. It's so vast. And having the podcast has been just a really great way to open the door for those conversations and then facilitate them in a really meaningful way. Because a lot of times I think some conversations I have with people can get stuck in the DMs, and me and another fellow coach might be going back and forth. And unless one of us takes that step to be like, hey, we should talk about this so other people can hear about it, it's like, well, that information is only so good between the two of us. But what about sharing that out there? And that's the amazing part about podcasting.
Share the wealth for damn sure. But sharing information is really, I think, one of the coolest things that I've experienced with social media and all media platforms, really, YouTube, podcasting. It's just, where can we go to not only to consume, but to create our own and then share it out from there, because sharing helps people in so many different ways. And it's wild how just one little piece of content, one Instagram post, one podcast, one tagged whatever, can be so transformational and so helpful for somebody that's stuck, in their health and fitness journey.
100%. And it's interesting that you say that about one post or, one conversation or whatever it is, because obviously doing so much of my business via social media, I pay attention to those types of analytics and the engagement. And it tends to surprise me what posts people give the most feedback on, whether that's in the form of, I'm talking more comments, not likes, because, that's a little bit more passive, let's call it, of like anybody can, go tapping and liking as many different things as possible and just kind of passively scrolling and consuming that information. But ones that get shared on other people's stories, ones that get saved, I look a lot at that because I want to be thoughtful about the content that I'm putting out there. And that's the closest measure I have, other than somebody reaching out to me directly and saying, hey, I really like that post. And when people do, I tend to be surprised, or it tends to be the one that kind of just popped into my head and I spit out real quick versus another post that was pretty contrived in the sense of like, I planned it and I put a lot of thought into it. And then you just never know what hits. And it's always interesting to reflect on. It is.
And it can be really frustrating from the creation side, the creator side. You pour minutes, hours into the most intricate post or best photo or Canva, or you hire somebody to do a photo shoot, or you just research and research to have the best, most maximized caption. But then it's the one that you just share, like, I'm struggling so much in my fitness journey right now, and this is what is a problem. Or you have one small little random little aha moment that you share out, and everybody's like, yes, that's what I needed. That's what's helping me. That's what I can relate to the most. Which I think is really what we're here to talk about, at least to kick things off. And it's just, what do we need to kind of kickstart an idea? What do we need to get unstuck? What do we need to find relatability in what we're here to do? And that's to try to get better every day. And one thing we were talking about before we hit record was this last year, because of COVID, because of lockdowns, because of gyms opening and closing and different training modalities becoming more popular, less popular, and people just needing to find new and different ways or go back to old ways of just maintaining physical activity or true fitness. A lot of things are staying around now that we're on the other side of this lockdown. But it's like people have had enough time to figure out what they like and what they want to do. But the struggle is still there in terms of not seeing results, in terms of finding motivation. So someone who incorporates fitness into her life on a personal level, and this is what she does professionally, where do you think we are right now in the current state of fitness trends, and really like the ones that are actually working for people?
It's a loaded question because there are so many. I could say one thing and I guarantee that someone else can come back at me with all of this information and data that might indicate otherwise. But based on what I'm seeing and hearing from my clients, from people I talk to on Instagram, from other coaches that I'm podcasting with, I'm somebody that came from and still consider myself a part of the boutique fitness space and the group fitness space. And so a lot of the predominantly women that I work with are your typical class goers who, when gym changes and the entire environment of being able to interact with other people and having that community as a result of the lockdown restrictions with COVID completely changed, they really felt those. And not from a level of just getting to the gym, but from that socialization aspect, from the ability to bond with other people that they made friendships with there. And then, of course, that manifests into the motivation to continue to show up every single day. And I think also just having that separation of like actually having to leave your house and making it a point, right? That's something that I struggled with on such a serious level. And it really ate away at me because I hold myself to a high standard, being that I am a fitness professional and moving my body. I understand at a fundamental level how important that is. And there were so many days and quite frankly, months over 2020 where I was just like, I can't do this. And I was having that negative self-talk and I was telling myself that. And so a lot of times I find that what I'm sharing on social media is because I need to hear it for me too, because I've been in that exact spot. And I think the direction that we're moving in is 100% going to be more of a hybrid model. I definitely see a lot of these boutique areas of the industry offering their virtual classes and those streaming services, whether that's in like a monthly packages or, X amount of classes per month online. I think it's going to really allow people to maintain their fitness in a positive way as they begin to travel again, as they start to go back on a vacation or work trips or whatever it is, it gives you the opportunity to stay connected with the favorite trainer that you love and is that person that motivates you to show up, or your favorite methodology or whatever it is. That's a really cool part about it. I don't think that we will ever move to a place where it's going to be 100% virtual because of a lot of those reasons that I said, that people want that community feel. I mean, I see you post on your stories when you're going to F45. I know you can relate to that from personal experience. Like, you like showing up and being there. And I think the difficult part with it, though, is that so many of these classes are coming from a place of, I'm going to put it in air quotes, high intensity, because there's a little bit of a caveat to that in terms of what high intensity actually means from like the science standpoint.
Which let's circle back to that. Let's really dive into that. I think it's going to help people understand maybe what you thought was high intensity and not so much.
Yes, definitely. And how to eat for that. And that's where the disconnect is coming in terms of results and not seeing results. And that is something that I find is a gap with the people that I work with in terms of their education, and also undoing a lot of the beliefs that they've had about, we'll give the example, carbohydrates and why they're so important versus being like low carb this, low carb that. I'm afraid of this. I can't have this in my diet. And they have these beliefs and this mindset that's just been like drilled into them from so many different fads out there. And then it's completely counterintuitive to the type of workout that they love. So from my perspective, I'm like, okay, you don't want to pull back on the type of workout that you love, then I have a responsibility as a coach to educate you on how to eat for that. I do try to get them to pull back on their training a little bit, which we can talk about. But it's taken me time to get there to really understand nutrition and really understand why I was that person who was working out 6 days a week, going as hard as possible in the gym, and then feeling like when I looked in the mirror, I didn't have the body that honestly I felt I deserved from the effort that I was putting forward.
And I think that's such a really relatable point. And myself included, I can think to so many times when I was doing all the things. I was showing up. I was doing 8 days a week training. I was watching what I was eating. I was just like sweating my ass off in the gym, and I was moving really hard and fast. And, you think you're doing work, and yeah, you are. I'm not trying to discredit that, but there is a difference in results oriented training and just for general movement, for general physical activity. Can you maybe break down for us how you interpret the difference of those two being? What is the difference between someone being very clear and showing up for their workout and saying, I am working on results, I'm getting results in terms of how I look, my body composition, more kind of external driven, versus I'm here to just to move and burn calories for general health purposes, and I'm not really kind of results driven?
Sure. And look, I think the first place to start is that there isn't necessarily anything wrong with either in the sense that one is better than the other.
I agree.
Because a lot of times there's an intimidation factor of even just going to the gym in the first place, that if you can just get there, that is step number one. I just had a conversation with a fellow coach this morning, and we were talking about sometimes it's getting a client to, if they have an apartment gym, put on their shoes, go downstairs and literally put their hand on the door, and they might leave. They might not go into the gym, but it's the repetition of making the effort of doing the activity that's going to get them a little bit closer to getting there. So I think first it's important to acknowledge that if you are a person that is showing up just to get your movement in and you need it for the sake of decompressing, I think that's a lot of what people say. It's like, this is my time to clear my mind. I zone out. I don't think about anything else. I get that rush of adrenaline and my endorphins are going from what I would consider an intense workout. And it just kind of lets me forget about some of the other things that are going on for 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. There's a time and a place for that. But what you're saying about results-driven workouts and results-driven training and the difference in how you approach those, everything just has to be a lot more calculated. Everything has to be a lot more methodical. And I think what I tend to see in my world as a trend is that people think more equals better, and more sweating, more intensity, more of this heart pumping, whatever you want to call it, like any adjective that is synonymous with these really intense workouts doesn't necessarily equal the results, even though you might feel good from it.
More is not always more.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. With this particular goal in mind. Yeah.
Right. And so, to break that down a little bit more in terms of what I said earlier of like what actually is high intensity, what I was referring to is the term HIIT, high intensity interval training, and it is totally misconstrued. So it's become synonymous with a lot of circuit training and boot camp training style classes. There's lots of them out there, and I'm not here to pick on any of them. Look, I was an instructor at one for a long time. And with what I know now about nutrition and more of the science-backed approach, I wish I was just using different terminology when I was training there. Because it's just like a matter of you think you're describing something correctly, and it's just a matter of using the wrong word.
Yeah.
So if we want to stick to this example of HIIT to really make this kind of clear, so I'm not rambling about it, something that is a disconnect that I see is people are like, oh, I'm doing a HIIT workout. If you're doing a HIIT workout, you are taking like 2 minutes of a break after 30 seconds of work, probably even longer. Like by definition, there has to be that recovery time built in there. As you know, from different workouts that you've done at lots of different places, what studio are you going into where it's a 45-minute to 50-minute workout where they are actually structuring in 2-minute breaks into the class?
No, the only time I'm taking a break like that is when I'm training more, in like the powerlifting style, and I'm doing low repetitions, heavy weight, and 2 to even 5 minutes sometimes rest in between. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. And there's a reason for that. There's a purpose for it. And going into it in terms of like, well, how are you then going to get the results from that? One of the conversations I have often with clients who are apprehensive to this idea of doing what they think is less in their mind is I say to them, okay, if you're not willing to slow down in that workout, what if you try it for just one class? Maybe it's even one station in the circuit, and really be present in the moment and ask yourself, if I take this minute break or whatever it is, even though the trainer's yelling at everybody else to push and go faster and whatever, see if in that time you took the break, when you jump into your next set, is it better than what it would have been if you kept going? Because maybe you then do choose to pick up a heavier dumbbell, or maybe you can grab that extra rep that before would have been out of range because your body is just that gassed.
I crack up in my head so many times when we're describing high intensity workouts, and I've been doing F45 now for several months because that's all that was available to me here in Los Angeles. Yeah. We're getting back open to my regular gyms now, but I crack up because it's so easy to fool yourself and to even fool your classmates, your instructor when you're at a facility like this, and you can be doing true high intensity interval training. You can be doing true fitness, performing in this category, in this niche, in all the right ways. Or you can just be acting like a Tasmanian devil and fooling everybody. I had this buddy, small little tangent. I had this buddy back in the Army who, when we would be doing PT, and he hated it. He was the most angry, disgruntled man in the world, but it was so funny. He was such a great guy. He was like, Chewning, the trick is all you need to do is just move your arms at an incredible rate, and everybody will think you're just like hauling ass. Like we would be running or doing whatever, and he's like, you got to make your face, you got to manipulate your face, and you got to be like, you got to make sounds, you got to just like spit, you got to do all these things. He's like, watch, we would do a lap in the track, and he would barely be running, barely be doing anything, but his arms would be flailing. He would be just this really weird dysmorphed face, and like all of our sergeants would be like, good job, MacArthur, all right, way to hustle, and then he would just stop after they would pass. And so I think that's where a lot of people are getting, or they're falling into a little trap of when you're in these environments of these boutique classes, you kind of buy into the hype, you get excited. And again, look, not to discredit, you're there, you're putting forth effort, you're building the habit, but are you actually doing what you think you're doing? Are you just moving, or are you there to get results? And this is really where I think, I'm curious your opinion, how much of it is ownership? How much of it is the responsibility on the person to really properly kind of research what they're signing up for, whether that's F45, berries, ClassPass, they're doing all these things. And where is the responsibility missing on these instructors to really break it down for people? Hey, we're going to be moving, but here's what it should look like. Here's what it should feel like. And here's how to kind of like litmus test.
So here's the thing where a lot of people have, two very different ends on the spectrum with what I'm about to say, and I can go back and forth on it myself. One of the challenging parts about the fitness industry is there's not a lot of regulation when it comes to having some sort of governing body for certifications. You have different certifications that you can go through, but as we both know from the power of technology and the internet and social media, just about anyone can become a trainer. And
in a lot of hours,
ways,
really.
Yeah. And
sometimes.
that's not always a bad thing because it gives people opportunities. And if you find something that you're passionate about, look, like I started in finance. I thought before this, I was going to be a journalist. If you asked me 5 years ago what I'd be doing today, I just like literally this past year was my 5-year college reunion, which didn't happen because of COVID. But I would have told you for sure that I would be in a very different place than I am right now. And I'm super grateful that I did have the capacity to find a little bit of extra time in what I thought was going to be my career to pursue a side hustle. And now it lead into everything that I get the opportunity to do today and every day. However, to your point that it can happen in a matter of hours that you're getting certified, what you're reading in a book and what you might watch through consuming other information, whether that's going through like an online training course or whatever it is not going to be the same as actually working with clients and applying that information. And that's where I think there's a challenge because there's not a big barrier to entry to becoming a trainer. And in a lot of these boutique spaces, and myself included, the person becoming the coach usually was in the position of being a client previously. Yeah, exactly. And there's a seamless transition to that. You understand the culture, you understand the environment that that company is trying to cultivate, and you loved it so much. You showed up every single day, and now you love it so much that you want to be a part of that brand. That's fantastic. And that's exactly how I really grew my group fitness experience. But you have to have that ownership as the coach to be like, do I really know what I'm talking about here? Like, I don't have, a certification of somebody who might be like a CSCS, like a true strength and conditioning coach. I have a group fitness certification. I have a personal training certification, and those are great. But half the time, what I needed to really learn was how to program. And I wasn't going to get that experience in group fitness because a lot of it is done for you, or you as the coach are kind of tweaking and taking it and figuring out how can I make this workout different. Unfortunately, I think taking the social media piece with that's turned into how can I make this workout harder but crazier. And when it became harder and crazier, it was like the clickbait kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like, what can I do to make this super flashy? And basically taking what could have been a really simple compound movement and taking it to the nth degree. Being like, let me turn a burpee into a burpee with a star jump and a jump knee tuck and all this other stuff thrown onto it.
That was actually my workout this morning. Yeah. Were you there? Yeah.
Right? I clearly must have written something like that at some point. And look, like there are times and places where if I look back, like I literally would write all my workouts in my notes on my phone, and I still have all of them. And I'm sure if I went back to like 2017 and looked at a workout I wrote, I'd be really embarrassed based on what I'm saying now. But you have to start somewhere and you have to learn how to grow. So I think there's a responsibility on the coach's end to be doing that self-audit. There then becomes a responsibility from more of the corporate structure. Like if you're looking at who's in charge of the programming at a higher level, what kind of continuing education is being made available to these coaches. The challenge with that is a lot of these boutique trainers are teaching 20 plus, 30 plus classes a week.
All the classes. Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you have time for a lot of those other things? And then show up and have the most energy that you can. Be your best self. Be present for these clients. Trying to manage and training a lot of people
on their own
too.
Train for their own health.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what really got me and why I was kind of like, I don't know if this is the life for me and what I really want, because I felt like I was preaching one thing to my clients and telling them to show up for themselves. And it became so much my world that I couldn't even show up for my own self. And that's kind of an aside. But on the flip side of all of that, when it comes to the client responsibility, I think the client should do their research on what they're signing up for. But at the same time, I don't know that we've done a good enough job educating to be able to teach somebody how to discern, like, is this the right workout for me? Mm-hmm. Because most of my clients don't know what's the right workout for them. And that really starts with, well, what are your goals? And if you don't sit down with somebody one-on-one to figure out what your goals are and figure out what your driver is, and your goals can evolve and change. And most of the people I work with, their goals evolve every couple months, every year, whatever it is. And I can catch that before they do often. So it's tricky. And, I wish I could say like, you should definitely look at this and this and this and research this and find this out. A lot of times it comes down to like, does this seem like a place that I'm comfortable working out in? And I think that's where people make their decision and then kind of leave it at that.
Well, so well said. And I really think that where somebody can have the most dominion and clarity over, well, what is my goal? What do I want to do? Is just to ask the initial question of what am I hoping to achieve? And case in point, so like 4 months ago when I started working out at a local like F45, it was because everything else was shut down. I was getting so bored and disgruntled about at-home workouts and things like that I wasn't even doing them. And so my physical activity dropped, my exercise dropped, and I knew Chase, you can't do this. Like, this is the slippery slope. This is where, when I was coaching so many people, I would hear like, I just got out of the habit. And I was like, this is where it happens. This is where it happens. I can't let this happen.
I'm smiling so big for that reason.
And so then my reason then for going into this style of training, and I'd never do this style of training. It's not what I prefer. And it's not really in alignment with my personal goals for health and fitness. But I did recognize that, Chase, this is the only option you have right now. This is really one of the only options in your area. And if you don't do this, then you're just going to continue to do nothing. I had to get very real with myself. And I hope the person listening can do that as well. What are you doing in your life? What are you not doing in your life? And then what is available to you to allow you to do something, to allow you to get back on the horse, or just hell, to get back on any horse. and then maybe you can find your horse again. And be
realistic about it,
exactly.
Right? So that's the other piece of this. A lot of people, they have this idea, like, if you ask yourself, who do I want to be? Who do I want to become? And they're like, well, if that's who I want to become, then I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I should be doing that. It's not about should. It's not shoulda, woulda, coulda. It's what can you literally do right in this moment today? And I think that's exactly what you're getting at, and giving the example of like, I saw that I was going to go in a direction that I really didn't want to go. So in the moment, I picked the next best thing. And there's a timeline with that, and there's an end goal in sight, and you're aware that you will adjust when that makes sense, but you weren't going to use it as license to just do nothing at all, because it's still something.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate you.
You're welcome. Proud of you.
Thank you. And actually now, like, I'm really enjoying it. Again, and I think where I want to go next in the conversation is when it comes to these group fitness style, class style training, exercise, training courses, classes. It's community that I think is really the secret sauce here. And I'm still at the same F45 now, even though the other gym that I used to train at opened, I think, like a couple weeks ago. They're still going through a little bit of a transition, but I've just really become so plugged in to the community here. I know all the trainers know me. They know my wife. Like, we've gotten to know a few of the other people there. It's honestly very, very convenient. I wake up, and in like 35, 45 minutes, I'm awake, I'm walking to class, and it's super great and convenient. And so I think honestly that's kind of changed, or it's had a pretty strong influence on my goals and why I train and how I train. Do you think that boutique training classes, group exercise, a lot of these, pop-up shops and community style training, is that a good thing? Do you think the community kind of like Kool-Aid, if you will, is doing more good for us, or is it kind of getting us away from what we really want? Are we getting too latched on to the community aspect so that we're actually kind of maybe losing sight of our personal goals, do you think?
It's such an interesting question. I've never thought about it before as being a potential negative. And that could just be that this is the first time in 4 years that I really have stepped away from that for an extended period to notice that I was missing. Like, that was my norm, right? And I think so many people listening to this can identify with that. If you're the person I was describing earlier and saying 2020 came, gym started closing, trying to recreate these virtual Zoom workouts that you're doing in your garage or your living room with interruption. It's the effort's there, but it's not exactly that same community environment that you're talking about. And, for all those reasons of like the socialization aspect, being around other people who have the same values as you, those are all so positive. However, I think the danger that can come with that is the desire to then grow these communities to be bigger, to be larger. We're talking about companies that still need to make money, right? And I think in scaling, that's where some of the I don't want to use the word danger, it's probably a little too intense, but the downside or the negative aspect to it can come in, because it's a matter of, well, how can I help as many people as possible?
Right.
And that only goes so far, because you and I can work out right next to each other, but that doesn't mean that we have the same goals and we might not need the same kind of training. So how do you balance those two? And I think that's where it makes it a bit of a catch-22.
Where do you think someone can kind of assess if they are in this group style training or just outside of just walking into a gym and doing their own thing? What are some ways that you would advise them to get really real with, hey, are you here for the right reasons? Are you getting results? What are your results? How is this really contributing to improving your life versus just stepping in and moving? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think it comes down to most of the people, and this is in the context of the people that I work with specifically and how I would approach it. So many of the people that come to me for looking for nutrition coaching, they're really frustrated. And they feel like they have pulled what I like to call every single lever by trying different diets, trying different workouts, whether it's getting outside more, focusing on their sleep. I would say those last two get overlooked a little bit and people don't appreciate them as much as they should. But it's a matter of asking yourself, when you look in the mirror, are you happy with what you see? And you might be really content, or you might recognize like, hey, right now, I don't have an aesthetics goal that I'm chasing. I don't have a performance goal that I'm chasing. I'm going and showing up at this class because my best friend goes every day and I really enjoy getting the chance to see her. And we both have really crazy schedules. So that's kind of our only time that we get to catch up with each other. Even though we're not talking at all and we're sweating it out, it's something that we bond over. There's 100% a place for that. But if you're the person, and this is the person I tend to talk to on a regular basis, who is like, I've been going to this same kind of workout for the last 4 years, or I see this other person and they're getting really great results. And you find yourself that you're starting to question like, well, why do I keep doing this thing, but everyone around me looks different? Or, so-and-so tried this type of workout, this type of diet, this trend, whatever, and it really worked for them, but I'm still in the same exact place. I think that's the point when you have to ask yourself the question of like, am I happy with what I'm doing? And maybe it's good for me right now, but in a couple months, I should potentially reevaluate.
Do you think, struggling for the question here, I can see that happening with a lot of people in this style of workout where you're going for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, and you finally look at yourself in the mirror, or you've been looking at yourself in the mirror the whole time, maybe you've been tracking, and you're just like, the effort doesn't seem to match what I'm seeing. I walk in, I walk out, I'm drenched in sweat. I'm kicking my ass. The trainers yell, I'm moving, I'm doing all the things we were talking about. But then when I actually look in the mirror, or I have some kind of expectation of, wait a minute, I've been working hard. I should be looking some kind of different way, feeling some kind of different way. Where is the ownership there? Where, is it, again, I kind of repeating a little bit of the question here. We go back to, well, did you have the right goal? What's happening when you step outside of that gym, outside of that class? Or again, are these boutique gyms kind of just capitalizing so much on being able to sell people, we're kicking your ass, we're making you sweat so hard, you're also having a good time, your friends are here, you're making new friends. Are we kind of being duped a little bit on just having a good time and moving around and sweating and not actually getting results?
Well, everything you're saying, it makes me think about experiences, right? And then me here as millennial, us millennials, we love our experiences. There's a point to be made that this will probably continue because we look for those things when we're spending money on a product, on a service. However, here's the thing that I think is really missing. Your point about looking in the mirror, maybe you're tracking your progress in 8 weeks, 3 months, whatever kind of timeline. I think there's two things going on. I think the first is that a lot of people aren't actually doing that, if they're being totally honest with themselves, because I see it even with my clients that work with me and they complete the work I'm asking them to do in terms of tracking their food. They get really comfortable with it. They might stop tracking some of the other data, like their weight, how many hours of sleep they're getting every night, what their energy levels are, how hungry are they, what does their digestion look like. All of those markers and that what we call biofeedback are extremely important in measuring your progress. What happens instead, usually everyone's too fixated on the scale.
Yeah.
And that becomes the only thing that's like the wake-up call. Or it's a matter of your clothes are getting tighter or they're not changing size. And so you take that, the lack of just monitoring the information that is literally right in front of you, whether that's taking a photo, looking in the mirror, or just feeling it in your body. And then also there's the whole piece of metabolic adaptation and trying something new. And in the beginning, just because it's brand new and it's different for your body, you very well might have quick changes and results that you like. I think the ownership should come in when you say to yourself, hey, I've been doing this for like 6 months and I kind of look the same as I did on week 6. The tricky part then is that if you look at the marketing piece and you look at a lot of these boutique experiences, it's like, come do this 6-week challenge for $99.
Yeah.
Come do this 2 weeks free, or come do first class free. Those are great ways to get your foot in the door, but it's also setting this expectation for people that in 6 weeks you should achieve the goal, and then it kind of stops at that point.
Yeah. Whose goal? That's the one that some, corporate level person created this challenge, created the goal. And so then that's going to be the marker for success. Well, what about yours? You made me think of something else as well. So that we can empower the listener, right? Maybe they are that person that is really frustrated and they're doing all the movements and all the things. And they finally,
I love that story.
It cracked me up.
It makes me think fake it till you make
exactly. It works so many times. But let's not try to get too frustrated here, and let's try to ask questions that are going to help us, not just, be a disgruntled customer. Let's say you're the trainer, Krysta. You've got this person that's been coming in. It's been 4 months, 6 months, and we want them to ask you a question that can help them. Like, hey, I don't want my money back. Hey, I want to be super angry, but hey, what can someone ask their trainer to get an answer that is going to put them on the path to really start getting results instead of just going through the motions?
I think that's such a great question. And I think this is where it gets tricky for trainers, right? Because, you asked me earlier, well, what responsibility does the trainer have? The hard part is how do you as the trainer approach that conversation as somebody, be like, hey, I think I don't know that you're seeing results here. Like, that's not really up to me as a trainer to decide, right?
Right. Yeah.
So this is kind of a PSA to that listener out there that take your health into your own hands. And even if you have no idea what your goal is, if you are dissatisfied with something, just express that, right? Like, if you are like, I feel like I'm working my butt off. I feel like you said, like, I'm sweating in the gym. I'm doing everything I think I should be doing, but there just seems to be something that isn't adding up here. And I'd love to have a conversation with you about it, whether it's like, maybe I'm not challenging myself with if you're in a circuit style class and there's weights involved, like maybe I'm not challenging myself there. Or let's say it's a little bit more of a workout that's like form driven with, like, say, a Pilates or one of those, like asking the trainer, like, is there something I could be doing to get, I don't want to say get more out of the movement, because like we said, this isn't always about like more in terms of being extra, right? Yeah. But it's the trainer, again, like, they're coaching a lot of people at once. So if you want to tap into the knowledge that they should have based on what we were saying, if you are a trainer who prides themselves on being knowledgeable, continuing their own education because that power should really be in their hands, then that could be the missing connection that you need to unlock whatever it is that you want to accomplish. I think the other hard part, in my experience personally, was that what was missing for me always was nutrition. Mm-hmm. And most personal trainers and most group fitness instructors are not nutrition coaches. And as somebody who has invested a lot of time and effort on a personal level to really learn about nutrition, but then continue to educate herself and get the different certifications to pay that forward and help others. I appreciate when personal trainers don't fall into this like pressure of giving someone an answer about protein or carbs or fat or, you know, this diet trend or that diet trend just because they want to give that person an answer. However, I think there's a lot of oh, well, you should just eat more protein and like, then you're good to go. That's too broad. Like there's so much more that could be said there. So maybe it's, rather than saying to the listener out there, you know, hopefully there's other fitness coaches that listen to this. If you happen to be a group fitness instructor, you know, maybe it's opening up the conversation to your clients more broadly, whether that's like making an announcement at the end of a class that is saying to someone, hey, if you feel like you're really putting in your effort here and you're not seeing the results you think you should see, I've got someone else that I can help you have conversations with who does specialize in that. I think something that I found helped my gym environment that I was working in up until end of 2019 was partnering with other people who were experts. Like I had a lot of clients who were dealing with injuries. I wasn't going to pretend that I knew how to rehab them. I had a really close relationship with a physical therapist that was literally across the street. It was great. Helped both businesses, and my clients came back performing better. And I took their expertise to even have them come in and help my coaches with continuing education. Like what types of modifications should we be doing in the population that I was in at the time, it was a lot of moms. So we were talking about like postpartum and, you know, training for safely during pregnancy and that sort of thing.
I want to ask you something else about something that you were describing, but didn't actually come out and say. And that's, I think too much variety can also be a limiting factor for someone who is seeking results. And I've mentioned a couple of times, but I go back to, you're familiar with ClassPass, right? You know what that is?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's, you know, it's like a membership. For those of you that don't know, you pay a monthly membership and you get access to all the things. You can do spin, you can do Pilates, you can do boot camp, you can do gyms, you can do swim, you can do whatever your area has to offer. And it's really cool in the fact that you can get a lot of variety and maybe find the thing that you like to do, or just make sure you never get bored. But if you are after results in your physique and in your fitness and maybe more specific results-oriented health goals, there is such a thing as too much variety. And especially when it comes to how you're training, can you maybe tap more into that? Explain a little bit more into how maybe too much variety in your workouts can be a limiting factor in seeing results.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of different, more specific, you know, like data-driven, study-driven, science-driven, whatever you want to call it, explanations that I can give to this. But think about this as a way to wrap your head around it for the average person. If you don't have some sort of baseline that you structure for yourself, some kind of starting point, let's use weightlifting for the sake of this example of where you're finding, you know, I work with a coach, and what she is having me do, I'm just about to start a training program with her. And in setting up that training program, picked a couple different exercises, you know, classic ones like basic lifts, chest press, push press, deadlift, chin-ups or pull-ups, you know, bicep curls. Like I'm not talking about the crazy stuff that I was making fun of earlier.
The tried and true.
Yeah, the tried and true.
Yeah.
And with that, she had me go into the gym, do a workout where I was finding my 5 rep max. So basically I was finding like, I'm not talking like the heaviest weight possible that I can push, but pretty challenging, still somewhat of a working set, but you know, at the upper threshold of that. Let's put it that way. By us establishing that, we now have exact parameters that I can go back to in 4 weeks from now and test again. If you are jumping from a spin class to a boot camp to some other kind of circuit training to a Pilates class, and there isn't that benchmark put in there, well, how are you going to find it? I think that is probably the biggest piece of it. Like, yes, we can talk about,
don't measure.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. It's the same reason why I was saying, you know, I think there's a responsibility in the person to pay attention to that biofeedback. That's essentially another form of it too. Like, you're not going to be able to measure your gains in the gym, right? if you're not setting those in place. And then on top of that, if you're not sticking to some of those basic movements and continuing to do them on a regular basis, well, how do you expect to, let's say increasing the weight is your goal, like most people would have that goal. Yeah. How can you then expect to work on your form and become more efficient at that exercise to then ultimately get better at it? And when I say better, I mean better for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree. And as you were talking, this analogy popped to my head of, imagine if you go to college and every class you take for your undergrad for 4 years is just an elective. At the end of the 4 years, you've learned a lot. You've experienced a lot. You've probably had a lot of fun, met a lot of different people, but you're not going to have a degree. You haven't done enough of the same things consistently to like really have some kind of collective, to actually be qualified enough in one area to be like, this is what I graduate with. This is my degree. This is my specialty. I mean, again, it's a difference of having fun, and it's what our main theme here is like, what is your goal? Do you have a goal? So if your experience is more of a goal, if I just want to have fun, I want to just not get bored, I just want to be stimulated and go, cool. That's all great. But then don't get mad at yourself, and don't get mad at the gyms and the trainers when you wake up one morning and you're like, you know what? I've been working my ass off. I should look better. I should feel better. I should be blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, how fair can you be there, really?
Yeah, I love that analogy. I appreciate it as well because I actually went to liberal arts school. So I have I did get the chance to take a lot of electives, but I was the person that went there and I knew my freshman year, like, this is what I'm majoring in. I went to a liberal arts school, but was lucky in that they had a journalism program, which is a little bit unique. And in a lot of other cases, had I picked a different university, I would have majored in English. And I can tell you, even doing what I do today, I am so happy that I chose the route that I did, because I really learned skills that have carried me through so many different parts of my life.
No doubt.
In the sense of how to use a camera, shooting B-roll. So many people ask me, like, how do you do the things that you do on social media? So much of that goes back to the fact that I took a course in college where we were essentially managing a local TV station, right? Like it was on our campus. We had the studio set up right in the school, and I was walking around with like a big tripod on my back, a huge camera, and I had a beat that I was covering. I would go out into the local community. I covered the education beat. So I was going to all the local schools and picking different topics and programs and like city council type information that we were covering. And while that has nothing to do with today in terms of content, what I do, it gave me this, like I said, tangible skill set to be able to apply it to just about anything. And I'm very grateful for that. And of course, writing and communicating doesn't hurt either.
Exactly. I mean, what you're talking about there is, I'll describe as like professionalism biofeedback.
Yeah.
When you're in the gym and when you're outside of the gym, hell, just existing every day, just take inventory of what you're doing and how you feel about it, and are you progressing, and or what is kind of the bigger picture it's contributing to. And if you can't get a pulse on any of those things, then you might just be in the whole realm of spinning your wheels, you know? You good? Did we lose your audio? I hear you now.
For a sec.
Oh, maybe your cable just came out of the back or something.
Hold on.
Well, I'll take a coffee break.
Okay. What about now? I think my mic, I don't know what happened. I got unplugged.
Or maybe the headphone just came out a little bit. I hear you back now. We're good.
Okay, cool.
Well, this is perfect timing. I need to wrap up here in a minute anyways. But so if we didn't really state it in the beginning, but well, you mentioned your credentials and stuff, but please, Krysta, share a little bit more about why are you this authority in the fitness and nutrition space, and what are you all about, and where can somebody connect with you?
Of course. Well, first of all, I appreciate you so much I love any opportunity that we get to talk. And, we joked when you were on my podcast, we could take this conversation in a million directions. Yeah. And that's something that's great about the fitness industry. For as much as I said that it's really vast and there are lots of different ways to get into it, while the fact that it's easy is a little bit of a double-edged sword, it's also fantastic in that you can constantly be learning. and really picking one topic or a couple topics that you're specifically passionate about that relate to you. And that's really how I've built my background. So I am a certified nutrition coach through the Nutritional Coaching Institute, which is a group that you connected me with, Chase, which I greatly appreciate.
Yeah, I love that whole team over there. You know,
yes,
shout out
they're
Michael,
fantastic.
Cam, Jason, Trish. I mean, everybody.
Yeah, such a great team, and all of the coaches that I've then connected with and have a network with.
How amazing is that
I've
community?
had such great friends from that. Yeah, and that's even how I found my own coach, Sonia. That's been such a great learning experience for me, and just a fantastic way to partner up with other coaches and collaborate and put our heads together and share perspectives about so many different topics specific to nutrition, but also to fitness. I mean, half of what I shared today, I didn't really start thinking about until I had a conversation with my coach, Sonia, about it, because she came from that group training world and has since stepped away from it. And I'm really grateful for all of that. And I love having these conversations with just about anybody. It occurs a lot on my Instagram, and I would say that's probably the best place to find me. Super easy. It's at the Krysta Huber. And then I have my podcast as well, which is called The FYX. And I do spell FYX with a Y, since it's Krysta with a Y. So those are the two best places to stay connected with me.
Amazing. Well, we're going to have all of that down in the show notes for everybody. You definitely want to check her out. She puts out amazing content, all things, you know, if you like Ever Forward Radio and everything that I put out, very, very similar. So definitely go check her out, and follow her on Instagram, check out her podcast. And so, Krysta, the last question here is, everything we've talked about is, you know, bringing awareness into somebody's fitness, nutrition, and mindset to help us move forward in life, to live a life ever forward. So I'm curious, how does that land on you? What does that mean to you? How do you live a life ever forward?
So since I listened to the show, I knew this question was going to come, and I did think about it a lot like yesterday and this morning. And I think, just in the context of this conversation, especially, we talked a lot about being your own self-advocate. And I think that's really what it means in terms of taking control of your health and being your best like speaker. I know that I'd said that in a kind of weird way, but like just being able to check in with yourself, whether that's physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever, and saying, hey, does this align with where I want to go? And accepting that that will change. Like, to me, when I hear the word ever forward, I think about evolving, evolution, taking the next step. And that's something that I've learned so much in my life over the past year and a half. Like, so many other fitness coaches can relate to that with how our industry changed virtually overnight. Being okay with the fact that change is the one thing that is always guaranteed. And sometimes you just got to roll with it, even if it doesn't go exactly how you want it to.
I love it. I mean, it sounds so cliche, but if there's one thing we can always rely on being constant, and that is nothing is constant, is, you know, change is inevitable. And so if you can kind of just get on board with that, then there's a lot of exciting ways to grow and change. And I welcome it. I welcome it for sure.
And I say that as somebody who has not always been in that place. Like, I used to be,
of course, and
I still am in many ways, so set in a lot of ways, and have had to go through uncomfortable periods to just be like, okay, it is what it is. Just
surrender and go with the flow, for sure. Well, Krysta, thank you again so much for being here. And anybody that wants to check out more of your content, like I said, it's down in the show notes. You can learn so much more down in there about her, as well as check out our episode resources for anything that we mentioned, and expanded notes. There'll be a link down there for you to check out. So thank you.
Thank you.